ma je ma ga nam ge wo wo so so rang le yi je ju yu de zon ye shan ze lo de yang ta ga de ba ra ba de bo de ye so ha de yang ta ga de ba ra sam ga de bo de ye so ha de yang ta ga de ba ra sam ga de lo ge re dong da ya yu xie wa me de le be jian da de wa da de ba ru jie be da xie jian yang de le le yu zo xie be ni yo Let me remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta motivation, we should participate in this discourse. So where we left off in this commentary on the perfection of wisdom or wisdom gone beyond, Pranjana Paramita, so we look at the distinction between that which is definitive and that which is interpretable, Chang'e in Tibetan, from Prasangika, Madhyamika point of view.
대야 통로가는 데라 도대베 롱도이 숑고 니가 해지 롱게 숑 콜라 숑고라 데기 담빈도 도즈장레 셰 민족고 신도니부 폐 체외 상지가의 예동이 잡아 마라 장애 니가 되라 장애 니가 대방아 예바 도그바 네 송바셰도 섬자만 남디는 너의 공제 도 공제를 콜로섬 장애 샤와다 지소장네 콜로 동분이 장동다 타망예동 셰라 디 주제양 콜로 섬이 셰버 주제원은 조준 주장 주 다음에 동지에 언도 셰데 콜로 등부 가서 가사가 다음에 장 동시 최나라 대접 마가바다 밥에 가서 세워 마셔 쉐 탐제라 대버저 가서 가네 쉐이라 미대바다 탐에 가서 생이숨라 생자마 랑은 대바다기 랑은 대바다라 대버 저버주게 제와샤샤레 쉐이라 미대바데 다음에 동지 거슴 숨버 중알레 더보니 중고데 다 무대 다시기도 계란도 메로에 장동다 타맹고데 다시기도 계란도 좀 유제게 유동이 버셰도스 어디다 콜로스 상의조들 다지도 드라마 히어디 니도데 장애 남자 시를 자시면서 가시오 말이지 가지에서 상시 송인데 니도 캡시고지 양가지 장애 요르스 히야모도지 대오만 섬자는 신기 인 장애 남자들이 가요 말이지 어디다 섬자버시나 인 콜로스 장애 시 콜로 당보 그래서 니 정도도 타만 이동시 거리스 어디를 해야
So as Kishla read from the commentary and explained that in the two lower schools of Buddhist tenets or thoughts, Siddhanta Rupta, namely Vaibhashikas and Sautantikas, they really do not make a distinction between interpretive and definitive discourses. For them, every teaching or discourse given by Buddha is to be taken as a definitive discourse. Whereas in the high Buddhist schools of thought, so they do present a distinction between those two types of discourse, if you will. Definitive discourse, Gaden, or definitive meaning, and interpretive discourse, or Tangden, interpretable meanings. So in the case of Chitta Matrins or mind-only school, when they look at the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma and the second turning of the wheel of Dharma are the examples of interpretable discourses or interpretive meanings. Only the last turning of the wheel of Dharma is regarded as a definitive meaning or definitive discourse.
지라마 롱고 쇼고 쇼고를 또베 쇼고에 미차시오 디렉트 나시 셔 디렉트
According to Vaibhashikas or Chidamava, they do not accept what we call lungi chogo, means kind of orally verbal discourses, as a real chogo, turning of the wheel of Dharma. For them, turning of the wheel of Dharma necessarily refers to the realized teachings, the realization discourses, and the example would be the path of seeing. Right, the path of seeing is regarded as an example of the turning of wheel of Dharma. Now, in the case of substantikas, Dodeba, they do accept there is such thing as lungi chogo, transmission discourse, oral transmission discourse, verbal discourse, and for example, they might refer to the discourse on the Four Noble Truths as such, so unlike Vaibhasikas, they do accept both forms of discourse, oral transmission discourse, lungi chogo, turning of the wheel of Dharma, and tokwe chogo, realization, turning of the wheel of Dharma.
What did that? That some person take over, because Changia did it, because does he kill and daughter? 你东西，给没弄连没用的脏东西，那仍旧是现在小事，统统的把但是做些的把这些的你做的你东这些，天就现在，东西我的但是做些这些有个什么个些，东西我的做那个的，你东多，他们有的上东多是，我经常这些都是这些。
仍旧别搞什么个？
仍旧把。 东西但是做些这些开的是吧？
啊，来弄是。
呀，这些别考虑他，可是得连着点么着，这有那样排头嘛是吧？
啊，来弄是。
东西点嘛，这些个他的本的时候他，考虑爬爬来，研究的时候他我这他这时候是干啥？哦，这时候。 长东下过的，
听住真下不的。
说你我们一直都是的不对，我们的也懂的，你这啥叫是吧？我就说这些的开练的生活嘛是吧？东西那个。我这他就是刚刚小学嘛，这他我们知道是吧？现在你不说是这些了，刚才瞧马上都的，你得瞧他。 长东小伙子，现在你把长东意思，用一直都是的东西是个谁？现在你把那个多多小伙要么说有的把那要到什么就，通常别给他要么是吧？我现在通常把当时是吧，你看看情况是吧？他天教是通常把这把当时是吧，这把情况是确实要么。
So in the mind-only school or Chitta Martin, Semsamba, as we said before, the first two turnings of the wheel of Dharma are regarded as interpretable meanings or discourses, and the last turning of the wheel of Dharma is accepted as a definitive meaning or definitive discourse. And so how do we differentiate between interpretive and definitive meanings according to Chitta Martins is that which can be accepted literally as it is a definitive discourse. That which requires interpretation that cannot be accepted literally as presented is an interpretable meaning or discourse. So that's how they differentiate between those two types of discourses. Now, in the case of Savatandika Madhyamikans, so for them, definitive discourse or Gaden is that which really deals with emptiness and that which can be accepted literally as presented. Okay, so it's like a bit of a combination in the case of Savatandika Madhyamikas, right? Something that is literally said, right, but also reflects emptiness, right? Because sometimes things are said literally, but it talks about something else. But that's not definitive discourse for Savatantika Madhyamikans. So the example Geshe given is, for example, a Heart Sutra, Pranjana Paramita Hridayam Sutra, Shiram Yingbo, is an example of interpretable discourse. Because in this Heart Sutra, the emptiness is presented not being qualified by the object of negation according to them. It's kind of a generic, right, way of doing it. Whereas the different versions of Pranjana Paramita Sutras, right, 100,000 or these other versions, they think those are definitive discourses. Now, in the case of Prasangika Madhyamikas, any discourse that explicitly deals with emptiness is definitive discourse, and any discourse that deals with other meanings, not emptiness, is interpretable discourse. So if you are wondering what is the whole reason or purpose of differentiating between definitive and interpretive meanings or discourses, right? Remember right at the beginning, our thesis is this: in order to realize, accomplish either nirvana or Buddhahood, one must realize emptiness, right? That's our thesis. Yeah. So now, in order to realize emptiness, then we have to understand the distinction between definitive and interpretable meanings. Without that distinction, we really cannot understand emptiness, right? So that is the purpose why there's a whole section, or we deal with these categories of definitive and interpretable meaning discourses. So emptiness is something that we must realize to attain nirvana and enlightenment. Then we really need to be able to understand and identify what we call definitive sutras, right? Because definitive sutras are going to deal with emptiness, and interpretable sutras do not, right, explicitly deal with emptiness. So we have to, it's by studying and gaining knowledge about the definitive sutras that we are able to understand emptiness, right? Once we understand, realize emptiness, then we could attain liberation and enlightenment. So that's what exactly stated in the Lekshe Nyingbo, the definitive and interpretable what called discourses, called the essence of eloquent explanation, where, as Geshe quoted from his memory, the whole statement, which basically said, Lama Tsongkhapa, in order to accomplish nirvana, enlightenment, one must realize emptiness. But to understand emptiness, so one must be able to understand the distinction between those two types of discourse, definitive meaning discourse, interpretive meaning discourse.
Because that Tenju Rangju you don't Tono de Batenja to she was the Dashi Yizo Gomashi. Tenju Lul, Tono de Bagudete, she Taran to Dashi Yamugoshi, she not way.
So in the case of Savatantika Madhyamikas, definitive meaning discourses are the discourses where the primary subject matter is emptiness, and the way they are presented could be accepted literally as it is, right? Whereas in the case of Prasangika Madhyamikans, they did not use the word literally as it is. They said discourses which explicitly present emptiness are the definitive discourses, right? They did not say it has to be literally accepted as it is presented or something like that. You know.
我就是在理性节目告诉的，我们能空心送的，我们能够steady的可是啊，同的帮的这把当，什么的这把是，我的你动都生意的的，现在同的帮的这把是呢，东西的是做小些，什么的这把是呢，这是这是一开的那种啊，我第一做就是那，可是这个可是让就了。那你懂意思？我的理性你不告诉我们那空心里下的，我的空着天上就路着的，天就路的个我们东西那些都是这个是吧
？So the standpoint of Savatantika Madhyamikans is presented in the Umanawa, illustrating the middle way or the illumination of the middle way, right? And as Geshe said, so the wordings are, as Geshe again quoted from his memory, which is something like these discourses primarily deal with ultimate reality, right? That's their subject matter. And then they are presented sort of validly, which has to do with literally accepting as it is presented, right?
我对他，但是根据我的容易不应该，可是什么时候成业基本都有控制下去了的，但什么时候是呢？都在控制下的，但呢，因成业机会的，他就是比容易吧，基本就不是，但我们的他现在的了，老周没事吧，他们的这些个的话，我们天主所以呢，老周没事他们多少就天的因成业机会的，西乡在这就不个好的。
테라니가 로드 미세베 돌텐데.
테라니가 다 오메로스노 대샤. 로드 미세베 되는도. 저 롱지바가 다다 디샤다 sem노데 샤데 샤거디. 신의 공든의 오메로들이 사실적인 오메로를 로드 미세베 되마 샤세도아.
So the Chittamatra, they primarily rely on a sutra called Dote Kongtel, Unraveling Thought Sutra. I think that's the translation. For presenting the distinctions between definitive meaning discourses and interpretable meaning discourses. Right? That is their main source, Dote Kongtel. And whereas the Madhyamikans, they rely upon a different sutra called Lotte Misebe Do. Lotte Miseba is inexhaustible wisdom, Bodhisattva, right? I think he must be requested it. Those are sutra called inexhaustible wisdom, Lotte Misebe Do. I'm saying the thing in Tibetan so that that's more reliable there. And so based upon that, Madhyamikans present the distinction between definitive meaning discourses and interpretable meaning discourses.
我听他读书不是说不清他的，但是现在吧，容易吧，他有时候成绩拿下去个是吧？他多的话在西藏嘛，这个成都去给这些什么的成绩拿下是没些开修嘛的。的成都人的有种是的空心的，的这个结巴可以要嘛的是。
So as we said before, in the two lower schools of Buddhist thought, Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, they really do not, have their own presentations or making a distinction between definitive and interpretable meaning discourses, right? In my footnote, just a reminder that we did say that Sautrantikas have a little inkling of that, but they don't have a presentation about the distinction, right? That's footnote, reminder close. Whereas the higher Buddhist schools of thought, Chittamatrins, mind-only school, and then the Madhyamikans, both schools, right? Savatantika Madhyamikans and Prasangika Madhyamikans. So not only they use the terminologies, right? Definitive meaning discourses, interpretable meaning discourses, but they do have a whole presentation, right? A standpoint on what is what, right?
Yeah. Okay, that. Look at that. Look at me, that was here. These are the tele, you don't, you are doing the con, the con. Chong doing the con, the conda, Gundo Java, the Chong, the conda, Tonga Java, the you to show. She is on 돈의 장이 개발을 유지해 거는 저거 된디스. 쉬어도 가서들 군도 되면 유지해 조시에는 좀 도장 장동당 쉬어도 가서 예매도 돈돈 되면 유지해 조 신 또봐도 유동도 조 유동도 조주스 dordebayinla tadungya lungdi jugdoso dinyi tabe doye munzinda tungu jirawa yashi tembe dinyi tongju tang jewa sawa songso sawa ditadi loju mesebe tebe dodele dinyi nangsha tega te songja shida ome lo changi di loju mesebe tebe dol shiwa juze tire yi tisi sari
Lori Mesebe Donald give Kujo Tembe Dodi, Tangzen, Tendam Tembe Dodi.
the Tenjo Lucy was around it.
No.
Could the Doshin Changdong Doshe, Tunda the Deshe, the Ronju, Tunda the Batanza Doshi, doesn't dash it killing or didn't hit you.
No. So both Savatandrika, the Madhyamikins and Pasangyam Madhyamikins, they refer to the same source, Luda Misebe Do, right? The Sutra of inexhaustible wisdom. So looks like come up with different understandings here. According to Prasangika Madhyamikins, discourses that primarily deal with conventional realities are the interpretive meaning discourses, and the discourses that primarily deal with ultimate reality, right, are definitive meaning discourses. Now, the Savatandrika Madhyamikan adds a little, if you will, a twist to that. They said it is not enough that a discourse can be accepted literally, but it has to deal with ultimate reality. Okay? And as we said before, Prasangikas do not use the word, it has to be accepted literally as it is,
What is here some as a dodi changi kever Juja going show at the end, sure the concert of Kuzo them, but Juja to Changdong. Sure the concert that made the Tondo de but Juju them. Dot you don't do Joju. Dorteba ina tadung yung tin jugdo so dinyi tobe doy muzinda tonu jiro shi tembe dinyi todu de jewa sa song so sa Geshe gas de dodin she Geshe gas tiwa Geshe jo song chas o lo me de do koron de song chas uja.
So in that inexhaustible wisdom sutra or Lord Misibeddo, the details are given in that sutra, where it says that discourses that kind of present primarily the conventional realities of persons and the Dharma are interpretive meaning discourses, and discourses that primarily deal with the ultimate realities of Dharma and a person, self, are the definitive meaning discourses.
What the young thing is the Jeboles, don't but the worship is shiva. You don't do the Shidaki, Kali, since you cause that Jibute, she the child of the Shesonga. They told her, don't know the jaw, 6 early songs so said. They are Changdong to Jelula. Sir Changno you do the tower dimja. The thing is, the work of Jackson, you did a lot of music, them and all Jiway but then the Sisek of Song Chas was Jiway. Don't like the Wajiba, you don't have the Javish, can't simply connect sure that the shower to the sheets, or the lot of music, them and daughter, things you change. What is all it? But the Sisek Song Chas, or this year.
So say the Pandit Davison your role. So in what is presented in the Samadhi Raja Sutra, King of Concentration Sutras, or Things in Gebeddo, is, I think, it aligns with what is stated in the Inexhaustible Wisdom Sutras, Lodem Misebedo. So they align together, and so that has been kind of mentioned by Acharya Chandrakirti in his clear word commentary, 6L, right?
Oh, this is Karsa, she is on the Diritun, the Changdong the Jilu, Changdong Ji Doi Dodi Duja Kachama Shawa, Yimu Yang. There Changsheba, Jetam Le Mejawa, Doya Tongxing do Chang the Xie Go Me Good Chang Xie Guba La Changdong Xie Shaxing, tell a Changzu Yi Yuba Les, till Jida Changdong Shang said, Chang said Jida, Shedaji, Yajiba Shagro Changsan. So that the Dujaka Chang said, it does so yes, come over now, you saw that, yeah, Chiang, treasure, and the Chang says, you know, Tata the Chang said, Dokona Chang, Tangi Sana, he said, that you should not know the words of a ship, you don't say, they might Chang, or to the Titan Chang race. She don't Chang Dong, it was a case of the New York, Dujaka Chang, Dokona Tangi.
So what Geshe read and explained right now is related to the meaning of the word Tangten, which literally means interpretive meaning, right? It has two sort of understandings. The one is not in this particular context of differentiating between the two types of discourses. Like in general, when we talk about Tangten, means things which Buddha taught, like according to the mental dispositions of individuals, slowly leading them somewhere, right? That's called interpretable, right? Yeah. But that's not the meaning of the interpretable here, right? In this context, it is in terms of the subject matter more. As Pasangika said, that discourses that primarily deal with ultimate reality, the truth, are the definitive discourses, and discourses that primarily deal with the conventional realities are the interpretable discourses. So the word Tangden, interpretable, has two sense of that, isn't it? So in this context, it's different, but in this other context is how Buddha skillfully guide you through different ways, taking into account your mental disposition. So that's also called Tangden, right? In Tibetan at least, right? Yeah, interpretable, yeah.
What is Garza? Tell a Changzula Niva, that the Jacka said, Suraka Niva, Padama, say, she was the more day dashing is on the mirror. Tell a Hindu lady Siva, the Siva la Tangni, she go the dinner, more than Hindu, Chagovata. Young Dujitaji Metaji, somebody. Modern Dashi Hindu Sondu Ronya, Medaba some Dushi in New Tadu Maibe, Tadum Tele Hindi, Dikonani, Dushi Debetomba, Tabu Tone the Tango, but then Dikonani Hindu Tango was. Or Tirida, Karza Changsa, Changdu, Garis and Disorder. Padma says that Jiva Marjita said, Jiva suggestion about on the tea, young Yeshe gone there, and then something the Jiva Shane, and something they get. Padma says, she said, Jiva Sarani said, the dog was more songs, Jiva Mayita song, or Tita did the race. Karsa, Juja Koran, Part of Marseilles, the part of Marseilles, Mother Yonja, part of Marseilles. Part of Marseilles, silence when you see. But the Karsa did part of Marseilles, she said, pass at the Leda, Maribata, the Lake Sivani, so that part of Marseilles, give us some, give us some, you say, as it is Karsa. in the Daji da in the Karsa, Dad Zibata, Ranzi the Ninshe. Ta you go call the Javasi, the Kozo Daz, Pumo, the Gasu, tell a Shakbado to get ya, Shakbado to get the Bansona, and the media Tarato is here, Tonda the show is around. That was a part of my say, in Jevo Santa Jinshe. Oh, this says the media Tavaji says you're
the Tibetan word Trang also has a sense of to guide, you know. So that's why there's different meanings of the Tibetan word, you know, Trang essence, guiding you skillfully is also right called Trang. But in this particular context, as we said, it is in terms of the subject matter, where according, now we just look at this from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, discourses that primarily deal with the subject matter of ultimate reality are definitive meaning discourses, and discourses primarily dealing with conventional reality are interpretable meaning discourses, right? So that's how it is. And so we have to be in other words, I think in my footnote, the lesson is that we have to be careful how these terms are used, Tangye, right? So as Geshe read and explained, for example, the word Tang means to guide or to lead. Tang can be lead, yes. In the context of when King Ajatasattu, right? He killed his father Bimbisara, right? Then he regretted like anything. He thought, what did I do, you know? And then somebody said, but go and talk to Buddha. And then Buddha kind of stunned him with that like 4-line discourse, right? And father and mother are to be killed, and you know other things. Right? Then he got, what did Buddha say? You know, but that particular lines really require interpretation, isn't it? Right? We don't talk about the father and the mother as we understand as parents, right? Buddha didn't mean like, oh, kill your parents now, right? But the word father is like a coded word. It really refers to like the ignorance and the karmic formation kind of that. So that has to be killed, means that need to be purified, gotten rid of, right? And the mother probably refers to more like the craving, you know. So this need to be killed means this need to be abandoned, you know. And then and he said you also should kill. Literally, it says the super hygienic king and something else. But really, the language king here means it's more like the self-cherishing attitude and the self-grasping. Right? This needs to be destroyed again. Right? Looks like kill the king. He didn't mean that. Right? And so if you do all of these things, you will end up in a pure land, he said. So what it really means is, if you really destroy ignorance and the karmic formation and the craving and the self-cherishing and the self-grasping, then you will end up in nirvana. That's the whole meaning. So that whole, the discourse Buddha gave to King Ajatasattu after killing his father really requires interpretation. So that can be called Tangye, right? So whereas other types of teaching, for example, you can accept something as literally. For example, we said all composite phenomena are impermanent, right? That you can accept literally. But that's not the final meaning of reality, isn't it? Because beyond that, we have the lack of true existence of phenomena. So that is the more ultimate meaning, definite, isn't it? Although you can literally accept that all composite phenomena are impermanent, that's what it is, but that's not a definitive teaching in this context, right? Meaning, because definitive has to be deal with emptiness, right? Selflessness. There's something beyond that, right? So this is why it's really quite complex. So we have to pay attention to those things. Let me see. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No.
What is you must this year? The Gita, you must look at the tongues should the conject. You must the part don't just Java says in the America, Sanjay Gundis Jugus, that Sanjay passing it the yard of humors and called they hit a henant of Shin. In the other, something they gave us some lazy somebody's. Not the passing it, 소말리 송도하고 마시 로바 ხედ다지 메르상 파타스다지 로바 ხედ다게 메르스
No, sir.
아니 양제 집에서 소말리 아니 이거 다 나라 지금 다선 이거 신의 가레스
No.
어떻게 가서 코통보 데 심리도 히어로 냥에 쳔보 간에 인데 집에서 소말라 상지 히에자와 될 그 셈도 양소도 지금 파네 세상에 셈도 유저된 누룽도 사르스
No, sir.
이 사자에는 신의 어디 파도스에 있어야지 송자에는 거기 될 고하게는 다 당보돼서 마 소날려서도 다 파도 마세야 돼 파고님 세와 마세야 돼 인지 말이서 지도 거리고야 뭐라 봐
No, sir.
에는 거다 배 신의 바도다 시 코아코들 사모고다 레다 니무니들 해샤선 엔텔 배 사모도 고하게는 그런 in the danger now don't you don't see do we did it.
No, sir. So Geshe would like to kind of recapitulate the story of King Ajatasattu, right? Of course, so under the influence of bad friend, he just killed his father, right? And so he could be, he could have the throne. And then he felt so bad about it. He was grief-stricken. And then the mother said, why don't you go and talk to Buddha, right? So mother sent him to see Buddha. And so when he went to Buddha, he was so nervous and overwhelmed by the grief and the regret. But the Buddha just, said, welcome, Your Majesty. First, he even didn't think it was him, because he himself was so consumed, absorbed in himself, that I'm such a bad person, I killed my father. So I don't think Buddha is calling me that, right? He looked around, there was nobody except himself. Then again, Buddha repeated it, welcome, Your Majesty. And then he thought, oh, it's me, really. So it kind of relaxed him a little bit, right? His kind of little space in his mind. So because of that space, now Buddha was able to communicate something to him, because if Buddha did not welcome him and treated him like sort of a normal, then he was so overwhelmed by grief. So there's no way to communicate. And then Buddha said this, right? Father and mother are to be killed, so is the super hygienic king and all of this, right? And then send him home. So he went back home, and then he thought about this. I don't think Buddha really meant, killing that father is the way to go. What does he really mean about that? So he started to prop into this whole message, and then because he was quite really intelligent person actually, and so he was able to figure it out that Buddha was using a coded language, but talking about the need to uproot ignorance and the karmic formation and grasping all of that, and then he could attain, purify his karma and attain nirvana, right? And so this is how, through his own sort of probing into the matter, he was able to find out the 12 dependent link, interdependent link origination, and through that dependent arising, he was able to realize emptiness, the ultimate reality, and then free him, from his agony and of course suffering.
다도 될 시에는 디테원이 디시 데베 동바다 동 장고데 데네 디코는 시엔 장고바고 어디다 가서 뉴자카 정어다 소라 코로나 생기다 뉴자카 당기는데 소라 코로나 당기지들이다 뉴시 메다 동야데 뉴시 메다 받으려 되시나 그 정도이야 그래서는 디제 메자바데 디제 내로 타도 말이지. 디제 내로 타도 디제 조심해야 되어라. 어디 정거지 다 정동이 요새 니빠데 어디 있어서.
So that short discourse Buddha gave to King Ajatasattu is used as an example of to explain this other meaning of the word tongue means to guide or to lead, right? The whole purpose was to get him out of that whole grief and the regret and lead him slowly to on the path to liberation. But in this context, when we talk about the definitive meaning discourse, interpretive meaning discourse, we are really looking more at the subject matter itself, And so, as Geshe, I can explain, for example, Buddha did say that all produced or composite phenomena are impermanent. And that's the truth. It's a truth, right? All composite phenomena are impermanent. But that still is regarded as an example of interpretive meaning discourse, because impermanence is not the final nature or the ultimate reality of all phenomena, composite included, isn't it? So there's the emptiness. The emptiness of true existence is the final nature of phenomena. So by talking about impermanence, Buddha is again leading as if to understand the ultimate nature of composite phenomena, right? So again, the word tongue means to guide or to interpret, or it has to lead to that. Maybe now the word interpret is not working, but anyway, yeah, there. So in the context of differentiating between those two types of discourses, definitive meaning discourse, interpretive meaning discourse, we look at what is the primary subject matter of a discourse. And so as is stated in the supplement to the Middle Way, Madhyamik Avatar, that discourse that reveals or that deals with emptiness, ultimate reality, is a definitive meaning discourse, right? And a discourse that deals with other than emptiness or the conventional reality is an interpretive meaning discourse, right? That's the distinction made. The reason for this is that emptiness is the final nature of all phenomena, right? And there's nothing else to interpret beyond that, right? That is the final interpretation. That is where, the last say in the matter, right? Emptiness is. Beyond that, you cannot explain something else about, right? This is why it's called definitive in that sense,
가자 라 도저 개와 고스 제위 책 감가를 쇼와 남네 예도 dorjolas 어디다 예도도 다버디 다 신경 다버네 도도 대바 주도마 이내양 가자 도도 개와 싸마 제위 자시 그 손도 메롱 장동도 조고 시 대기제야 런지바남 다게 로라 셔 강라야 동다버 주바소 미해증 연어 런시 주바소 요거와 시주 말해바다 이미 신인들세 품목하고 다 런시 동바 시소 송바 자시지 손도 메더베 장동 조라 장도도 조라 개대 풍부가고 들어가자 동다바 런시 또뭐 해봤다고 가제 개발 자리에나 자시기 손도 토베 예도도 조셔 와서 저 대조시나 런시 저 동다바 저 지바와 이 런지시나 근데 셔터지 동다바 저야 말데 런시 저 열어서 얘네 런시 저 개발와 어디서 현지보다 러시아 동바세마도 동다바 요마로 어디서 현지보 돈 개와자야 말이스 다 기르도 다 제다 자야리스 제가 기르도 다 예동세 현지보다 장동 줘야 되고 저질로 동동 개와 맞아서 어디 있어 이 생기도 하고다
So in a sense, both Savatandika, Madhyamika, and Prasangika, Madhyamika agree to some extent that a definitive discourse is a discourse that deals with ultimate reality, right? But then the Savatandika Madhyamikans add a little bit onto that, that it's not only a discourse that deals with ultimate reality, but that it can be accepted literally as it is presented, right? And Prasangikas don't add that extra line, if you will. And so what kind of, why this holds a little bit difference between Savatandika Madhyamikans and Prasangika Madhyamikans, if you wonder, it has to do with different standpoint. According to Savatandika Madhyamikans, Umar Rangkyuba in Tibetan, that things are intrinsically existent, right? Rangshin Yiduba, intrinsically existent. But they are not ultimately existent. Things are intrinsically existent, Rangshin Yiduba, but they are not ultimately existent. So it means turn tampar, right? Can you hear me? The word there. That's not there, Whereas for the Prasangikas, it really means the same thing, right? Intrinsic existence, ultimate existence mean the same thing. Whereas for the Savatandika Madhyamikas, they don't mean the same thing, isn't it? For Prasangikas, nothing exists ultimately, nothing exists intrinsically, right? Whereas for Savatandikas, yes, things don't exist ultimately, but they do exist intrinsically. So this is where that issue comes up. And so that's why, as Geshe said before, it again mentioned that in the case of Heart Sutra, Shirab Nyingbo, because there's a lot of words called no form, no all of this, but there's no clearly qualifying the object of negation. It's not attached to it, the qualifying. So therefore, this is interpretive meaning discourse for them, because for them it should say things are not ultimately, there are no ultimately existent form. Then they can accept it literally, right? But there is no such qualifying characteristic. So this is interpretable discourse, and whereas in the the different versions of Paranjanaparamita Sutras, 100,000 and 20,000, all of that, so that's all, a lot of statements which are qualified. Things are not ultimately existent. Then they say, okay, that's what it is, right? That's what we agree with, So that's a definitive meaning discourse example for Savatandika Madhyamikans.
장애 샤니여데 강사 최저시 매버더비 콜라통부 예동다 강사 라자테베 제제 동베 강사 당미 라바다 바다 수저랑 세지 주바 송베 콜라통부니 장도예라 대다 장도든 제루 주네 주네 공기소 타이데 예바다라 고레 공 그바르히 다음에 참았다비 네 메롱한다라 Kausa Dami Rakwatam Tendes, Lojang the Rimji, Dami Chamo the Shubi Sherdam. Tashiva Nushi the Rang Sing Trivago Goji Rigwanam, Rigwanam so. Kolo Parba, Shuna Ranshi, Rang Sing Trivakani, Shuna, Tanya the Yosomani, Dujati J. Rigid. 东把你电入同到年呗，我们现在弄弄了，对呗，也动他做把我是，路的呢，用不把啦，说不，搞啥的同志前边我是叫我南，这些些呗，也动也把马些，新人到位搞啥的同志，搞啥的同志前边我说。 도도지 제가 찍으라 마자와 양 도대지 가서 런시 제 동시에 가서 무슨 저와 저 제시지 가서 양 대다 잘 거봐 제가 거거봐당 대자야 마자와 소미 소함에 제서 다부 돈이 더베 도타지 예도 도임바 바다 세와 메디 조자르테베스 bomba다 부치기 그래서 루테베 bomba다 부치기 나도 가자티 세와자 bom바스는 용 bom바스기자 저도 세바르 자와 레데 조자테베스 도탐제라야 동의 자위 조아시 실 대다 용 또 남래 수미 소화미 제소 송바 대다 그 수저 소 매바도 뭐 면지 대다 러시메바 또 뭐이비 제벌신 쉐오 콜로 탐마 군다랑 세이 마저지 효이랑 세이 저버때 또 정도인데 고지 세이 좀 sem자베 대바다기 민대셔좀 차마야 제벌자 쉬바 고네 고바 두자티 티제 이리지 이야 당보네 쉬는 런시 가베 최다비 참어때는 린데라 저 신주소 매번지비 세다죠 세다제외세 대방배 세다 수지제시 동화도 쉬기다미 라바때미 주자데 신의 콜로 발베 때마다 최다미 참올라 휴비 셔로 저는 콜로 타만이 주자라야 주자라 어머도 이케바요도스 다 콜로 발베 실저 주자들 텐조시 콜로 타베 실저 되서자마셔로 디케바야리스 어디다다 셔라니무 가솔리라 가자 데 용 통화답에 제방고스 매나야 근데 제도마다 해다날 통통 제방고스 자리에서 근데 셔라니무사 통통에서 매나 근데 상제송 지바송서 되게 이게 이도도송 자와디 리바도 야 셔라니무가 마찬가지로 태조로가 디간가 도체로서 디 도송 제바 자리마기도 셔라니무가 소미 소미에서 소아 통답에 정심에서 야들이 말듯이 소아 미에서 타이드 미야디 깨자 말이스
from well, not from, as Krishna explained, that when you look at the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, the intended audience, to use modern language, or the disciples of the second turning of the wheel of Dharma on Pranjana Paramita Sutra are the Prasangika Madhyamikans, isn't it? The intended audience or the disciples of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma are Chittamatrins, mind-only school, because it is in this turning Buddha differentiated between the three characteristics of phenomena, Tsinyasum. Yeah? So according to Prasangika Madhyamikans, Heart Sutra is a definitive meaning discourse. Even though, like in the Heart Sutras, what we really find listed are there are no forms, no feelings, no all of this. But if you look in the different versions of the Panchaparamita Sutra, Buddha already used the qualifying term, right? Things do not ultimately exist. So that has to be brought and applied here in this context. When Buddha said in the Heart Sutra, there are no forms, it doesn't mean forms don't exist at all. When he said there are no feelings, it doesn't mean feelings don't exist. What he meant is, the forms do not ultimately exist. Feelings do not. So that has to be sort of understood, right? Import that whole qualifying in other sutras and bring it here. So therefore, for Prasangika Sutra is a definitive meaning, right? In the footnote reminder for the seventh and the Madhyamikas, it is an interpretable meaning. Remember, because there's no qualifying term here. That's just a reminder from my side. Yeah.
What is that? Chang'e kewa to tere ke. Tadak di tenjo lo kola tangbo la ngedong yu sa tere kanchi kansa dami tensin dhuza ma higa higa ra di chigi pare. Kola tangbo denshi ten kansa dami rapa tengo ra. Sida tenjo lo si na kansa dami to shoyi dami chara me ra. Si nika tongyi ba jigwa ra. Sida kola tangbo tongyi tensi ra. Ta rangji mense di si na kansa dami shoyi dami kaka she di gaza chara she yin zang. Ina kola tangbo kansa dami mato ma ten yin zang shoyi dami ten yo mar si zang tongyi ten yo mar si yo di kansa dami chamo kansa dami rangji di ziyo di tonga di kansa dami chamo she yo mar wa. Baya tere chewa juwa teni tenjo lo la kola tangbo la ya nye tong yu siya tere. Ta rangji mense di kola tangbo changzong bi che ko rwa.
In the case of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma on the Four Noble Truths, for Prasangikas, it does include definitive meaning, discourse, or teaching. Whereas for Savatantika Madhyamikans and Buddhist schools below, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma is, interpretable meaning, discourse. The reason is, as we said, for Prasangikas, the selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena are qualitatively same, isn't it? There is no slightest difference. The difference is only from the point of view of the basis upon which its selflessness is established, isn't it? Yeah. Whereas in other schools of thought, they do differentiate between selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena, right? When you look at the Chittamatrins and the Savatantika Madhyamikans, and so because the two selflessness are not qualitatively same, and so therefore, this, for example, the Savatantika Madhyamikans and the schools below will say that the first turning of the wheel of Dharma presented selflessness but not emptiness, isn't it? Whereas the Prasangika Madhyamikans say, no, it did talk about emptiness, because for them, right, what we call the selflessnesses are same, right? Selflessness, emptiness means the same thing, right?
What is that? The tenjo lo sentere or karsa. This karsa rangju lo kolo tamada koro parvaji de ome lo sena. Geshe chikwa sha. Cheze geshe tel da. Ane oma ba ono da kolo parve geshe da ono sha. Tame geshe tel ondi sha wizarwa. Semza ba shengwa. Semza ba lo sena. Semza ba shengwa. Oma lo sena. Kolo parve geshe de ene Oma ongdong di she, tame she she ongdi di she. Ta ti kewa kari she the koro pabe joja de kola tamala madema. Kola para koron ten do tong de la ongdong she. Kola pabe joja de kola tamal ten do go de kare ongdu.
Rangi big from Savatantika Madhyamikan point of view, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, really that discourse is meant for sharp faculty, disciples, isn't it? Whereas the third turning of the wheel of Dharma was meant for relatively, less sharp faculty, disciples. As Geshe explained, sharp faculty means that simply depending upon the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, they can realize the ultimate reality there, right? Whereas the less sharp faculty students, they have to understand the meaning of the second turning of wheel of the Dharma, but depending upon the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, right? So that's how the seventh Tantaka Madhyamika say. Remember, and again in the footnote, a reminder, earlier we said from some other perspective, the prospective disciples of the second turning of the wheel of Dharma are Chittamartins, and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma are the Madhyamikans, right? So we should not mix those things, right? That's my footnote reminder. Okay.
Yeah. Tena kola padani dijala ono chewa yedo se rashi yewa nuji ni shena rangsin yi madaba debe shwa de shaji so kanya rashi shembara deba la nuji ni shena rang tingi chuba debe shwa la shaji so kanya shadi merwa da Ti tongpa debe shola shashi so tamsi runga debe rikpa sashi so sungpa nam so. Chir changdung yin do yi na changdung gongpa jen yin mi gu jang. Changdung gongpa jen yin na gongshi so sung yu gu so si. O debra. Chir rashi yo neshi ne shena Brumada. Ti dombe do chi chola chaji taji dombe rigbe zawahira soba namsor datiri kani rang tongtama chawasa dewa chuna chaji kaya medevi deme namjatina eni chaji taji tewa di zawahira soba da ome rigbe zu zawahira hewara disa soba di res namso se sir changdong jin do yin changdong yin Changdung gomba jeyi gojang. Changdung gomba jeyi na goji so som yogo so. Chir karsa changdung indoyi na changdung gomba jeyi go imi gojang. Changdung gomba jeyi na ina goji so som yogo so suja. Changdung dorsa duja ka chang jiwo siya jikda. ane joja da ni chigo se da o da duja khaja jiwo se da goi go ba de ge da go marwa o di se se changdong do da gongba se de chao de goi go ba se sha ge changdong do se de de da de ni sha ge se o di se
da gongba chen ge do de pada man se ja de ro
la
ge bu ma je da se sha ba de changdong gongba chen sha de ro
o di ge
da So as Geshe Redden explained, that things could not exist ultimately. If they were to exist ultimately, then they would not have the functionality characteristics, right? It's not feasible for the things to have certain functions, and so that. Is something we find, let's say, stated in the Mula Madhyamika or the Fundamental Wisdom Treatise, right? Because things do not exist ultimately, so therefore they are able to, right, function as they do. But if things were ultimately existent, then they would not have that functionality, what called features, if you will. So in terms of understanding the word meaning Tangden, right? The Tangden normally we translate as interpretation, but then there's two meanings. The tongue has the sense of guiding you or leading you to something, isn't it? And so if it's a discourse that's meant to lead you into something, there's a special name called Tangden Kongbachen, a kind of it is like a special category of Tangden, right? It's not the real subject matter kind, isn't it? The real definitive, interpretable, it has to do with, as we said, the subject matter, which is the conventionalities, right? So that's that kind of distinction,
ya zhiga rinpa shen, rinpa song shi war, tata sungye siwa rinpa song si war, gongzhe song ba tila, kola song duja kaka she, sungye siwa rinpa song tila, duja zhiga rang, zhiga tangpo tong rakpa di, tene chazi, tene ya chawa ten shi, o duja zhiga rinpa tenpo tila, sungye siwa kola song si, o tata di shi yin si war, ta.
So what we talked about so far, especially depending upon the Dorjee Kongtel Unraveling Thought Sutra, is that the three turnings of will of Dharma, each has an intended audience or a disciple for that, isn't it? Okay. It looks like every teaching is meant for some intended disciples, right? Now we are going to talk about what we call the three stages, if you will, as explained in a sutra called Sungyal, King of Dharani Sutra, right? So 3 stages means that how one person can be led on these 3 stages, right? It's not meant for 3 different people. It's the one person who can be led, right? First you start off with the basic things, easy one. Then you try to lead them the next level of meaning, then the next level, right? So that's like for the 3 stages of the King of Dharani Sutra, Sungi Kyebo.
Oh, the young song young you should do less. Regular that noble can care about noble Jones, he would hear a tea. He saw noble can yes, draw some the show some yes. Noble John pay. Jerry Simpson, you come chain, without doing that me so ye. Tam you call George, ne, chun do a jivatam. Tea order. The don't say me so ye, so denji, the singing boo, teaching way, 2 dollars zevatam. Tea order, Shimon Dobby, Kolo Tam, she so, Simpson the Sanji Sar Sanji, Yula, Zevan Zeva, de. The judge Rebasum Sumba, Kolo Sonda, Tonji. Tung music de Colosson the tick by Chishun, the Ja Juta Devi, on the Sheva, Viva, Shela. Then the Kansa J, Lam the Rimji, J to Ibe so. Then don't the nigga Tingy Jen Lam the Rimji, J to down. Tangboni teaching to ring away. Love remember he the Nintendos. Or that they colors of the Duja this year. So years of the Rebus say, Duja Jackie, Corona and Koya Nuru Shaya, Tamborak, what the Yimidas do that day. Today I show you them, today I charge the Sanji Commodant, Rim Duja Jack Chip rebound, Shivery. Colors of the Duja Gita was so that there is what to do.
So they make a distinction between how the 3 turnings of will of Dharma were presented, and the 3 stages are presented in the King of Dharani Sutras, right? As we said before, the 3 turnings of the will of Dharma, was presented as if for 3 different intended or prospective disciples, Whereas the 3 stages in this Dharani the King of Dharani Sutra are meant for one individual person to be able to be led through the 3 different stages, right? Because in the beginning, you just talk about basic things, simple things that person can understand. So you're kind of taking time to gradually guide this person along the stages, right? Ripening the mind. As the mind is more mature, then you teach the next level kind of thing. So the example here is how Buddha, talked about impermanence, right? And the beginning, the 16 attributes such as impermanence. And then, of course, that leads you to understanding of the suffering nature, right, of samsara. And then that slowly leads you to understand selflessness, isn't it? So it's like the stages, isn't it? Start with impermanence, then the suffering nature of samsara, and then you have the kind of liberating path kind of thing, right, selflessness. So that's like a 3-stage discourse in the Dharani Sutra. Right.
我这他这个个啥，农入看这个农入的别个，可能农入上些学到啊些人完了，你主要送是吃完送是这个，别把其他些的人把送是够多啊。我这个现在在那的，他们的别考啊别个谈多是吧？也得可别他们人生都跟着这的，现在提出他们怎么这么的？现在上去可么等下子，我的人机也这样的了，我这起来从业是人不是的看啥，这那忙些呀，听面些，现在可是印度些、人些些，这把什么什么着，这是他这些到这些，这忙有些呢，听面可是印度的土木làm的，人些土木làm些。इन थिबा सिमु लाम से नि यु दे थिबा सिमु दु जाइस ता दिरे कर छोल हिदु खा यार या
So the example given is how an expert in polishing a jewel, right? And this person knows follows a process, how perhaps you might have to dip the jewel in some solution to clean the first level of the dirt, right? And then you go through the process, and then at a certain point you're going to polish it, and then exactly you bring the natural shine back to the jewel kind of thing. So it's a process, right? So like that, in Buddha Dharma, there are different ways of presenting. We talk about this, is that the three vehicles, the three yanas, right? They are meant for one individual practitioner to be able to, right, achieve enlightenment, right? So that's one perspective, isn't it? That first you start off with maybe people, let's say, the first level is that I do not want to be reborn in the bad migrations. Okay, what do I need to do? Level one. The next one is, okay, now I want to be actually out of samsara, right? What do I need to do? Next level, okay, this one. And then, okay, now I really want to be Buddha, right? And so you guide the person slowly, right? How to get out of bad rebirth first, then how to get out of samsara second, and then how to finally become a Buddha. So that's like a three-stage development of a person, right? Well, another way to present is as we do with the three levels of practice. The initial level practice, right? The path that is common with the initial level practice, the path common with the intermediate level practice, the path that is exclusive to the Mahayana, right? And then you go to enlightenment. So these are what we call the three-stage discourse, right? In the Dharani Sutra.
我的看啥这个，从前是人把送的对下这个了，对下这个之外人把现在我都写的是。我的大哥看啥的了呀？写的这些呢，他们听让印度这的呢，让些这的因为这些时候写的这，这时候开嘛就是，他们就生活怎么的呢？人他们啷些的呢？希望新不啷去这是，对下可能听把新不看啥写的，的这张牌子这没啥认识了，在用着都俺说那个这样的现在的，变成一些现在的看啥。听面的通我啷的什么的，听面上去时候我这现在习惯的。
So as Krishna said, that this three-stage discourse is how to guide an individual practitioner all along these three stages to be able to achieve the final kind of a goal, spiritual, isn't it? And so there are different ways of presenting, as we said before, that some scholars might say that, okay, first level is guide someone into the path of Sharvaka Yan, right, hero's vehicle. Then guide that same person into the Pratyeka Buddha Yan, the solitary realizer's path. And then guide the same person on the Bodhisattva path, and then kind of finish off with enlightenment, right? Then, of course, other scholars say, you know what, this is not what it is. For example, Penche Sonam Trabhaprabhu said, yeah, don't say guide into the path of that. First, guide into the path common with, right? So the word common with the Sharvaka, then the Pratyeka Buddha, and then on the Bodhisattva path, enlightenment, right? And the other way is, as we do in the Lamrim, the 3 types of practitioners or 3 levels of practice, right? The initial scope, the intermediate scope, and then the advanced scope, right? Basically, for one person to become enlightened, that's the goal. But we have to go through the gradual process, right? Not we have to, but most case, right?
What is it? Nintendo say, "Oh, no, some be draw the human you the drawing, but Oma draw the Nintendo in the 2 you can't do it on the draw good, no? Do it on Tony check up a Joshin. Some about the Nanga Juro, Yan, Jomi, the just some by the dinner. Human you the the color Tammy lawyer tonda. Oma would have lawyer did it. The name by the color parve. Oma will do it. The name by the color parve, lawyer tony base. Do just some on gay, that temper. Doye tong tembe, doye tong kabara menjula. Suma ba nange yeba yang menjura. Teng hinwa yungzhu, dendro di temba di doye gongzhe yu juje tong yin jang. Suma bu ronglu je gomba mende, demba trebe shene, Deva Tribe Shene, you do Jubda Kaundian, Jomini Shero, Cher Jubale, Sanyen Jubale, Sanyen Nangine, Gayan Novo Madento, he Sanyen yes, Ranula, Sura Gayan over Dember Yuji. Madame Hevo, the wrong read Sibasam, Tapatam, Muni, Mubome, Jeso Langshi, Long Trevor, Zeto, taking the Gondele, Shama, they made Suna, saying some color, go and never Sumba, taking regime in don't even told you, community. Duje Bodhisattva Song Gyeltsen, Tedara Konibe, Duja Lo Sodan Debe, Mor, Hima Demi de Debatar, Donna Tini Kundeji Tawa Gobe, Tau Chodi Joro, Tela Kolot Parwa. Yedon the Tama Changdon Yinjang. Dujang Gay Mor Tamang Yedon Dang, Papa Changdon de Mingete, Hijabara, Tamba member, Tamba Mela, Tenzin Cho, Dami Tomba, Maino, He Dujas and Gala, Dada Damite Maniles, Nama showed Sheva Henos, Tida Simsambak. Kolatama de Kanjeda Ronji das Niga Yedon is Sigorza, Simzabas and the Shaman Dendo in Sigor. Almost in the Shaman Demi in Sigor. The Sumabal Yawada, the Yomari, Dodger and Vasco, Tondo Yuduniga, Yongshing Marasena. The disaster, but Dizakora Sozo to the Shari Mother Jill, the Sumbabu Goma Maris. So that seems about Hija, the customs of Pendoreza, they have damages. Smaller. Ronjo, then they made damages. So that they just so to the Shari Mother Jill, the Sumabu Goma Maris. The Saji Koro Gomala, that should have the Rajim, they may have a Sanji, the rejection, what is it?
So both Chitamartrins, Manoli School, Semdamba, and Sevatantika Madhyamigans, Umar Rankyuba, regard the third turning of the wheel of Dharma as a definitive meaning discourse. Okay, and so the Chittamartins, right, because they think this is the teaching where the three, what we call the nature or the characteristics of phenomena are differentiated clearly here, right? In the Sutta, it says the imputed phenomena are presented as not existing truly or by way of their own characteristics, okay? Whereas dependent phenomena, Shenwang and Yungdup, thoroughly established phenomena, are presented as existing truly. They are truly existing or existing by way of their own characteristics. This is how, in the third tenet of the wheel of Dharma, these three natures or three characteristics or three chenyi in Tibetan are presented clearly. Okay, so that's how Chittamartins accept them as they are, you know. But then, whereas from Saivatantrika Madhyamika point of view, because they don't accept anything existing truly, isn't it? So the other dependent phenomena, Shenwang, and thoroughly established phenomena, Yungdup, cannot be truly existent, isn't it? From their point of view, isn't it? So then the question arises, it looks like there's a contradiction here, isn't it? Looking at the same thing, one say, okay, I accept them as truly existent, others say that there's nothing can be truly existent, right? It looks like there's a contradiction, isn't it? That means, did Buddha somehow make a mistake here, right? A person with contradiction, but that's not what it is. So the response to this is that, you know, whatever is taught, the way it is understood by these two schools of thought, you know, according to their level of understanding, that's how Buddha presented it, right? That's not the real intention of the Buddha, okay? Buddha said nothing exists truly, isn't it? That's Buddha's standpoint. But, you know, according to their level of understanding, so Buddha said, for the Chittamartins, that other dependent phenomena and thorough established phenomena are truly existent, right? Whereas for the Saivatantrika Madhyamikins, like they're not truly existent, you know. So it is from their perspective, this is how Buddha presented it. So the intention is their level of understanding, not Buddha's real intention. Buddha's real standpoint is nothing is truly existent, right? So this is how things has to be understood. So we will stop there today, and first I'll go to Pam, because I remember last time I had to say, please, you know, Geshe, I need to eat on time, and so you get the first say, ask question. Okay. Oh, please use the, yeah. Oh, did we have any from our invisible Dharma friends?
We do have one, but we can go to Pam and then go on, right?
Yeah, okay.
This kind of came up today. I just wondered what path is someone on if they exclusively will realize emptiness in a state of meditative equipoise?
Say it again.
What path would a person on if they will exclusively realize emptiness in a state of meditative equipoise?
Oh, I see. In a state of meditative equipoise.
Yeah.
What's the question?
What path are they on, or who is it that realizes emptiness in a state of meditative equipoise?
Oh, I see. Who is the person, right? You mean from which school point of view, or who's the person realizing it?
Yeah, well, the school of...
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I understood the question now. Morang kandi shwe de diskur gen ta ngan de mora di me ro sam da du da dhamma de she de ro gen ta kan je tang me liya da nyam sha ne ka su ro gen ta kan tang me ne dong yi do de yo la ro gen ta din de to gen khang sa de su de sa gen ani du da de se we ne du da ka gi khang sa de ge da dong yi le nyam bar sha de re da kan de ha kan de shin go re su gen ta nga de gen du de nam sha mang ko shi go ro gen ine dong yi da nyam bar sha ba nyam sha ngo le ya da dong yi do de la ro gen din de to gen khang sa de su de ro gen khang sa de du da ka re wang de chen da dong yi do de yo le go re su gen dong yi nyam bar sha du de su su na nyam bar sha da ji yo ro gen re ya ne ni ko ji disung go me da ro
Ale da this da
pero sem za ba gen nyam bar sha de ka da dong yi do de re ya sem za ba go ro de
La.
But sometimes Yamne chicken G because Tony Yamper shot and Rawage. Sometimes Kona Tony thought in the Yashampas that they cannot under Tony thought over Tisro that in the man of Rawage. It's what the limits.
That look on Yamdo, those Russian were. Look to check on Shower, the chick corner, the corner looked
Yamper shot out the share again. They in another number, and that woman think you will look she shot.
That's it. That you the Yaga.
Nonsense. So yes, I think this is I think clear. Geshe says, of course, when we ask that question, we can only look at it from a certain perspective of thought, right? We cannot mix all the schools of thought. Then there is no real answer, right? It gets all messed up. So from each school point of view, someone who is the state of meditative equipoise on, right, they call it selflessness or emptiness, whichever term they use. So that person, right, is realizing that. But, you know, generally what we say is that the Prasangika Madhyamika has the highest final say in the matter. So from that point of view, right, we said that whether someone has realized the emptiness as it is in that meditative equipoise. But different school must say, right, from their own perspective, every one of them in that state, they are realizing their version of the, let's say, their version of the selflessness or emptiness, you know. Common path. Right. I didn't say, man, two more lumps some out of us or again. To that source and the number of shit and then to that time, two more lumps made it is again. Send up a general quarantine by Indian, around you vision quarantine by Indian, think you vision quarantine by some two more lumps made of those on your side.
That two more in the that on that in the patient in the Dutama she or but that's also the carry out that so the tire.
The Chinaking understand the rimba of chain assembly to that time at third to do gala, woman think you about the Tongo love or again. Mother Chico Tagara sends up a dating my rogue.
That those shoes the Jagalia came up with the poor, gave up that Tadu said this is a course that you know. We will do the 10 years the day said that you don't think a person they shall. So the poor there shot that. Terang do the mother so change mixing young kind of don't of your Maria. So long about the mother Chazul hit at the Maris. So because somewhat some of course who Jagger said, said I think I had to shoot them more Shishumra. The Puvala be taught of the Yagashi data into the Mashiga, she made the pool terrier. She not. So
I think it's maybe related to what Geshe said a few times before, that of course from ancient Indian Buddhist point of view, if you look at what was happening in India, right, the four schools of channels came about. So they are seems like being honest about their own level, right? If you think, okay, what really makes sense to me about reality is the Vaibhasika first thought, then the practitioners, they just follow that and they practice that, isn't it? So until they might change their perspective and then say, okay, now I'm on another level, isn't it? So I think the thing is that, you know, if you are, let's say, on whatever level, it doesn't mean you are fixed and forever in that, right? You might, as you analyze it more, you realize there's other perspective that's much closer to the reality than what you already believed before. This is how it's refined, and then slowly you understand the final say in the matter, isn't it? Yeah, so that's what it is. But in the case of Tibetans, as we said, I mean, the Tibetan masters, you know, looking at the works of the Indian authoritative masters, they said, okay, the perspective that captures best version is the Prasangika Madhyamika. So whether you fit into that or not, from the day one, right, Tibetans think, okay, this is what I'm going to follow, and then just meditate on that, you know. So it depends. Does that answer your question? So if you are Chitta Martin, it doesn't mean you are going to be Chitta Martin forever, right? Because that must shift and change as you become more, right, thinking. You say, is this really captured the reality as it is? Or what about these other levels, Savatandika Madhyamika? What about this Prasangika, right? Is that really more befitting, right? So you analyze, and this is how you grow from within, right? You changes. Yeah.
What is the state of meditative equipoise?
Say it again.
State of
Right. Yeah.
Can emptiness,
Sure.
does it have to be realized in a state of meditative
Sure.
equipoise?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Follow up to
Okay.
her question.
Sure.
What is the state of meditative
Meditative equipoise,
equipoise? Can it be realized not in a state of meditative equipoise?
Can it be realized?
Not in a state of meditative equipoise.
Oh, we'll say it one more time.
Okay.
Yes,
The
yes,
question was when emptiness is realized exclusively
Yeah.
in a state of meditative equipoise.
Yes.
So I'm asking, what is state of meditative equipoise, and can it be realized not in a state of meditative
Oh, I see.
equipoise?
Okay. This is what again. The core the nyamsha la ne se chorwa again. Nyamsha ishina this the nyamsha se the tonda khande che lago yore sa rwa again. Ta namjing nyamsha se the tongba ni chigo chi ma do rwa again. Tongba ni le shen be chue khan yang rwa again. Ta mana ba so rwa again. The nyamsha se the nyamsha me ne ka le ya ni nyamsha se ge so so le ya da chi to su ya da jung ya chore the nyamsha de shi ya go rwa again.
냠샤 세야데 가르스는 텔레 째직디 버심 때와 좀 저거 냠샤 세고다.
Ale. 맞아.
냠샤스디 돈이 우선도 되고 말 동시에 냠샤 여라.
Ale no so.
너도 거기 내가 저거 심배 숙심모 때딩 바 현대 사람하고 디가는 숙심으로 내가 주도와. 어디에서 냠샤를 세고.
신의 그 차도로.
어디 신이 소리 심 출제가 봐 사모 땅에 내가 구조는 뭐지 되게 봤으면 때문에 저거 냠샤서 가지고
다이네 겐디 돈이도 냠샤 이시행을 시고 와게.
돈이도 냠샤들 돈이 돈수도 냠샤 요리 무슨 돈 냠샤들 이제 뭐 돈이 냠샤 돈이 무슨 돈 말이야.
Yeah, so Geshe is giving that whole different spectrum of the meaning of equipoise here, right? The Tibetan word is nyamsha. The nyamsha has a sense of that you single-pointedly focus on something, right? You don't get rid of all the distractions, right? It's more aligned sort of with a karma-binding thing. Not that you have to have a karma-binding, but it's like you focus attention on one thing only, right? And so it has different meaning in the sense that, you could have what we call inferential understanding of selflessness and emptiness, and you can be in a meditative equipoise on that, right? Or that you have a direct perception, in which case there's no duality, right? That is another level of meditative equipoise on emptiness. So meditative equipoise on emptiness doesn't necessarily have to be non-duality part, right? That could have. So I hope that gives us a spectrum of, right?
Does it imply union of karma-binding especially inside meditative equipoise?
Right. Then the nyamsha siddhi kaliya shila ni sung de ko be ke che yung go ma le sa nyamsha se de.
냠샤 이제 hilá 토고 말이야.
No. Yeah, it doesn't need to be, right? Yeah. Yes. So let's go back to and then come back here. We have time. Let me see. Yeah, you're welcome. Actually, you are going to keep the glass panel open so that I can hear you better, right?
Okay, so this one's a simple question. Where did Buddha give the third turning of the wheel of Dharma? Basically, the location. Where did the Buddha give the third wheel?
Oh, where did?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Sanjay ge choko sumba de kawa ko res again. Shoji kolo sumba de.
수마데 대서 가서
양보 좀
콜로 수마 거서
당고 de shago phongori.
자고 풍물 수마데 양받진 말왜
Sumba de 양고 좀 korbe. Nyel kore.
니 말이 비기 양받진지
Okay. 年月是这个呢，年月这杨八千。Geshe, let's try to recall it. I think Buddha did that at Vishali, okay, but we have to double check that. Okay, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. Okay, yeah. Oh, is that the only question?
There's another question, but I'm not too clear on it
Okay.
yet, so I won't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll ask.
Sure. Okay, so in the meantime, we can come back here and. Yeah.
So Geshe said that according to the Prasangikas, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma includes definitive sutras.
Yes, it include, yes.
Yes, but does that mean that there are sutras? It includes there are sutras in during the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, in which Buddha taught about selflessness and meant emptiness.
Okay.
because only then it will be definitive.
Right, right.
Uh, so because there are many sutras, obviously, when he talked about selflessness, and he meant emptiness, lack of self-sufficient, substantially existent self. It didn't mean emptiness.
Yeah, go ahead.
So are there specific
Sure.
sutras?
Sure. Tagi kengi di kana songa so da kholo tangpo la ruwa gen. Tenjo be ki chebe na kholo tangpo de ya da nge den gi da cha yours la ruwa gen. Je de ka ya ane da kholo tangbe na la namje chen de di tame chen ruwa gen. Ka rangje tebe je yu tame chen ruwa sa gen. Je da kholo tangbe na la ya di khung do gi do mangu yi ruwa gen. An do khare na la ya pe na tangme la be yin be yin na di yin ju tong ni yin ba ruwa gen. Di de song de ka wa de di me be na tan da tenjo ba gi ka do ge 그다 돈이 되는 거 그러게 디 텐다한테 되시게 보스러게
This is 대교 가사 다음에다 최 다음에 시 조제고 샤모도 아니 가자 차라 셔요 말와
라 인데 단다 랑제 집에 제디 다 라바들와
어디라 봐대
다 이제 차와디 전사디 도나를 컨데스트
다 가사 다음에 내세도 주자 가게 집어 두고 그러와
라래
그러지现在 주자现在 가사 다음에 라바 셔 다음에 차 셔요 그러와
라
또 tenjo ba 셔고 말와 가사 다음에 다 셔이 되서야지 시 조제고 샤르모도 가자 차도 마샤자 아니 콜 통보 가사 다음에 때다 아니 다음에 참못 된거 어디라
말이지 간사 담 알아 간사 텐주버기 콜로 담볼 간사 담에 내서 랑제 집에 제디 텐
디
요마레
말에
라
참모랑 댄스고
라
가사 다음에 뭔데 참나 댄스고
알아 랑제 집에 제디 텐 요마레 쓴 거야 말와
내 요마를 쓰고 말이데 다 섬담마다 가정지 문제에 랑제트에 되어 동안에 와
라래
텐조와 랑제트에 되어 동안에 댄스고이디 랑원도 못 잡을 댄스고
어디 도나를 컨데스트 돼 그랬어 다 빨라 나 지데 텐다
내가 다 동해 시바 샤미에서 딘지다 넘지 때나 지바이지
알레디 가서다 코러스 중이 가야 될 와게 알레
동해 랑원을 좀 해야 말이야 이거지와
no yeah I was trying to get a clear answer right because Geshe keeps on explaining the same thing I already translated before so I had to remind like we need the answer for that question of course for seventh and academicians and other Buddhist schools of thought in the first standing of the will of Dharma, selflessness is presented, and they mean it is this selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent self, right? Okay. And so that from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view is a very coarse level selflessness, because there is a different one, right? And in the other schools of thought, they said, well, we do talk about two selflessnesses. That's the coarse one. The subtle one is the selflessness of phenomena, right? For example. But the way Prasangika Madhyamika say that the first strain of the will of Dharma really did teach about emptiness, right? That's what it's saying. Is that when Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, we said he taught it in what called three different ways, right? Three repetitions, different, looks like repetitions, but not exactly, right? So where he says, that for example, first he wanted to say like, you should understand the truth of suffering, right? And you should understand the cause of truth of suffering is to be abandoned, right? You should understand that the truth of cessation is to be realized, and you should understand that the true path is to be cultivated, right? Then the second and third round where he says, even though you can understand suffering, but you cannot understand in this way, right? It's something that's a shepherd chawme, but you cannot understand in this way. The language is, from a Prasangika point of view, that means Buddha says that you cannot understand the suffering as it truly existent. You cannot understand in that way. So that's how they think that, as we said before, for Prasangika, the emptiness of a self, person, and emptiness of phenomena, or we use the term self, is exactly the same thing, right? So this is how they think, this is how Buddha taught it, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, the other question online, thank you for simplifying it, is it says, what is carried on from reincarnation to reincarnation and into Buddhahood? Because it seems like, in fact, she kind of even added on, because it seems like whatever it is, it seems to be, at least according to her, it seems to be intrinsic. That's the question.
Okay. So let me first try to check with right. Is the question about what goes from one life to another life and end up in enlightenment, or is the question about what is being carried on that thing to the Buddhahood? What was the question? Is it carried?
Yeah, I guess she uses the word carried. What is carried on from reincarnation to reincarnation and
Okay.
into Buddhahood.
Okay. Well, skated on sounds like there's something on the right. For me, it looks like two different questions. Anyway, let me try that with Geshe-la. The target on the condition again. And manzo that and the Tame be nekab ne cheneta again, Jawaching the chick good or again.
La,
Jawaching the chick good or what?
ore,
Jawaching chin jun that Tama sang gig again.
ore,
Ina says that Dinde that sang king and the carrier rest what Jawaching the chick dropping in the again. Until ya Yundan Church is you in what that chick can't sang get or again.
la,
The number 70 told that Yundan in a cage you was sang get or again.
ore,
Dinde you be in a D you get the Rangshin to do with was Rangshin do my best for that. That's the kitchen you need to go again. Rangshin do man a coaching the chief, watching the my kid to go to this kid was this.
that the calmer, that chick down. But you know, you said that can get you out of the Rangshin Chumna. That don't just said, Mel Shard or Dende songs, Rangshin Mother said the shower. Who are the
Not
because it shows you the children, the much is and the Pomo said, young son said, 2000 Koran Jogorbi, Koran Hanashi Yomara.
no.
She said, Rangi Mother Stissy or that.
No,
Rangi to call Soju to a jam here. Kratamu Yaboya, do in a doga. But Juya mean, I need Rangi to see her.
no, so. The draw thing any number 7, that's love to go again.
That you do it in number here, Jim do. With the Fumbo Rabat do more.
So what Geshe like to say is that according to Buddhism, right, what goes from one life to the next rebirth, and let's say, our goal is to be enlightened, which will go all the way to enlightenment. We call it roughly mind or mental consciousness. Yeah. So as this mental consciousness progresses and it goes through many rebirths and finally reach enlightenment, right? There are a lot of things on it, like quality, let's say, right? What's being carried, right? All these qualities. But these are, if you think like it's intrinsic, because we are so used to this intrinsic existence and perception, this is what we feel, because everything is dependently existent, isn't it? The quality of the qualities, right, that we carry from one life to the next are contingent upon some other things. They couldn't exist in and of themselves, isn't it? So there is nothing intrinsic. If something were to exist intrinsically, so if that things are good, it has to stay good forever. Nothing can be changed. If it's something bad, then there's nothing we can do about it. It has to be bad forever, But that's not the case, isn't it? Things are contingent upon many things. So all the things we carry on the mind or consciousness, right? The imprints and the qualities, these are dependently existent. Like examples Geshe give is like when we talk about, permanence, impermanence, or produced and unproduced. These are dependently existent, isn't it? With reference to each other, we can only say something is permanent or something is permanent. Otherwise, there's no such thing as permanent on its own or impermanent on its own. The same thing we say men and women, right? Our genders is a relative, right? Compared to the one gender, this is male, the other gender is the female, or the third gender in my footnote, right? So these are all contingent and dependent and arising. So nothing is intrinsically existent from Buddhist point of view. Okay, we take one more question I have, and then, yes, where is it? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'm still curious about the realizing emptiness and the meditative state of equipoise. And I just mean a state of meditation.
Right.
And that's the one that we usually talk about. But because people don't realize emptiness through the senses. That's true. Okay.
Right.
So what you would have to experience, and the way you would do that would be in a state of meditation, right? Mm-hmm. And if so, what meditation is analytical meditation enough?
Okay.
Is that enough?
Okay, I understood. Thank you. Mora tanda kandi shwe di tagi muthu ne ta pena tongyi liya mi ben nyam sha yin na ro ge. Sidu kang liya tene ta nganzo wangwe shebe gi ta tongyi to sk yo ma ro ge.
La,
Wang she zo gi tongyi to sk yo ma ro ge. So the tongyi to ba yin na Tony Togdan, the Comchi Majana Tony Toy Summer Sroge, and Comrade Yamashak, Dindegi, Nyamshak, the Ane Dirwake, Sorta, Chegum Re, Roage, Chegum Koranch and Tony Todd, Nyamshak Chedore, then they didn't remember Comchi containers.
that don't you talk about Jegumshin dog you Jegumshin don't semi chosen and the Koran some day Gomia Sura, Jugum Shisho, Jinjo Bemashi Gungura.
Tango,
What that don't you Jegumshin Gungur,
Tango Nyamsha into Jabachin.
Jeva machine don't you do Ayomara.
Yeah, Geshe say, yeah, first we start off with analytical meditation, right? And so if we are going to realize or understand emptiness, first time is through analysis and reasoning, so in the meditative state. So let's say through that, if we really, how should I say, understood emptiness, and then let's say we have that perception or the realization, now we can focus just on the realization itself, right? And then continue what we call placement or single-pointed meditation. Usually, as our teachers say, we should alternate between analytical meditation and single-pointed or place meditation, isn't it? But in the beginning, our hope to understand emptiness is through analytical meditation, because there's nothing for us to, right? Simply focusing our mind, we can't realize it, So I think in a meditative equipoise, for us to realize emptiness first would be through analysis, right? Yeah.
Don't forget the person that realize to do the chopping wood.
Yeah. So okay, so with that, we have something food for thought. That's what I'm give. So, and we will, we don't have prayer requests today, so we will do our Guru's long life prayers and dedication. It's good timing right now, yeah. Lord Gyaltsen, Udon, Bega, Den, Gesam, Pungwe, Judo, Memba, Shin, Tenba, Zinla, Wando, Gichu, Daniel, Shugun, Jala, Sowa, De, Mawa, Dame, Gungen, Donga, De, Kangri, Jongso, Ninda, Seze, Jamgun, Jawa, Niwa, Yapse, Zhangson, Dinzi, Mawe, Shiva, Tenzin Jebe, Jingo, Jebe, Xie, Nikun, Changzhou, Tendu, Long da tam je bebe beyuan je du ja ya zhe guan do xiao de te san gong da che zhe zong be zhe yong zhou yu re tu be nya ge long ri de je ne be be de ba tu de kang ri da bo xiao de dong na gong men zhe ba nam da gu den da zhou be pen de Tun do ju min che be ten le je ge san du je den do xiao de Chi Lam Me, Tu Jie Me Lam Da, Ge San Du Jie, Dian Dang Zhang Men Du, Zhou Shuang Tu Do Ji, Qi Ta Men Ben Dun Gu Lun Du, Xiu Ram Zhang Xin Ge, Hong Bo Zhou Da Me, Chou Zhou Zi Ye La Zhou Tam Jie Yin, Da Dian Mi Xie Chou Ge, Wu Zhou Zhou, Tu Dian Xie Dang, Lo San Jia Wa Ye, Xie Zhuo Dian Ban Zhen Be, Bei Yun, Ta de jia yong gu yang de nin jie ong bo xiao de shuo ji de sum gu cha na be me zhuo den be za wa so ta ba nam da chui de yang da lang ba ye lo san jian de be do xiao de tu zhuo ya zhen nong zhen yang be xin sam zhuo nam zhe sang jin zhu gong zhuo xie la song zhu de be de den be nga da qian bo xiao de Che be dong wang guo wang bo zhuo zi, zun be dun dian ri zi, zun be dun dian li xie tang zhe zhu, ki zhu xin yin xian bo xia dian shu, ke be lang du gu xie zi da zi, zun be cha ra nie zuo rang sa, sang bu di jie ri gong yi xin nu, sun dian xin yin, te sang zhu la zhu be, tam jin zi din, dian du be xia be, Shabden Zhou, Zhou Zhong Yawa, Seje Jen La Dang, Tu Dian Tam Jin, Song Men Zhong Na Jie, Da Jia La Sang Da Be Din, Xi Da Men Ben, Lun Du Shu, Chang Zhu, Sim Zhu, Ren Bo Jie, Ma Jie Ba Nan Jie Ju, Keba Nyamba Meba Yang Kone Gondo Bewa Sho Tongni Dawa Rinpoche Maje Pana Nyamba Meba Yang Kone Gondo Bewa Sho Sa Shi Beje Joshi Medo Zhang Rira Linshi Ninde Yenba Sanje Shindo Mede Wewa 中国南大新了这把说抗日rawe国外新港所平等的我马律中为接着是往天津家族下边谁的报道研究节一当古如热闹你让大家民叫我滚多让大拉满当对面去演白了龙觉节啥的南节云的让 도제 창계 고바 뉴도 조